Welcome back to another episode of the Fatties. I'm Allie.
I'm Rebecca.
Alyssa.
And we are super excited to have a remarkable guest today. We've got Claire Ayoub, whose upcoming film, Empire Waste, is poised to make its debut on September 27th in select theaters and will be nationwide later this year. Claire's journey to filmmaking is as compelling as her film itself. It's rooted in personal experiences and a deep commitment to exploring body image and self-worth. Empire Waste is more than just a movie. It is a reflection of Claire's own path of growth and resilience, and as we chat with her today, we'll uncover how her creative process and personal journey intertwined, how she brought to life the diverse and nuanced characters of her film, and what it means to create a safe, inclusive space on set. Get ready for a conversation full of insights and inspiration as we delve into Claire's story and the powerful themes of Empire Waste. Let's get started.
Claire, welcome to the Fab Fatties. We're so excited to have you here.
Do you see why she's an intro girly?
I see it. I feel like that was an instant serotonin boost.
Right?
Like I was just like, thank you. Like immediately my voice went up like in a full octave.
We really are so excited. We have a lot of questions.
Yeah.
I feel like, I know we sent you some beforehand, but like even then we were like trying to condense our questions. We were like, guys, we don't have her for like an entire week. Like we have 1 hour, like condense. But we are really
Y'all have
excited.
my email. Reach out again for anything. This is what I love about this project.
Oh,
It's
we
just
will.
Like, oh, I know. It's just like, honestly, the endless conversations. And also every time I meet folks who feel seen by this movie, like we just jump in deep. It's not just like, how are you? It's like, do I have things to say about my body image? I have things to say. And I'm like, I love this. I'm here for it. Let me be the vessel. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I love that so much. All right, so we just dive in. Dive in with our questions.
Let's dive in.
Yeah.
All right, about to dive in. That's a different vibe. That is a totally different vibe. Okay, we're gonna start. We're gonna just get started. Okay, so Empire Waste. Let's go. Empire Waste. It is a very, very personal story for you, right? I would like to know a little bit about, well, a lot about, how did the process of writing and directing a film that is so close to your own experiences with body image and self-worth really help you heal and grow, especially after having to kind of put it aside for a few years and do some of that internal work?
Absolutely. That is such a great question. And something I love when I teach is talking about when you're writing tough material, especially stuff that's personal to you really have to listen to your body in terms of whether or not you're ready to tell that story. Like there's that whole thing of like, like art is pain is art. You don't have to hurt yourself. So in that vein, like I started writing about body image when I was 23. I was a writer for Amy Poehler Smart Girls. And I didn't write the script until I was 26. Now I'm 35. I feel like I'm 75. I wear it like a badge of honor. But basically what happened,
You're in a good club here.
baby. I know, I love it. I wrote a column for Amy Poehler Smart Girls called Notes to My 12-Year-Old Self. And a friend of mine recommended me for that column because I started writing about body image on my Tumblr. Shout out to Tumblr. But I had found a bunch of journals in my room. I was in New York doing comedy. I went back home to Connecticut and I was like cleaning out stuff. And I found a bunch of journals in my room. And I thought I had like completely forgotten that a bully took over my notebooks or took, like wrote really cruel things to me.
Oh, sure.
And then I realized I wrote them to myself. Like monster, like this, just the way I would write. It was just like so full of anguish and anger at my body and myself. And so doing that, like I was doing comedy, and which is very much like character based, and I love comedy, and this movie is like, it's so much comedy, and it makes me so happy. For that reason, I didn't want it just to be, sad, tough. How many times we just see a movie that's about a fat person struggling, right? But what started this whole journey was me wanting to talk to my younger self about what she went through when she was clearly feeling so alone and isolated. And that ended up having this response, which was so beautiful, of friends. And I felt very scared. And like, this is what I mean about the healing process and how I learned how to take care of other people. Was I was so scared when I started writing about it, but seeing people respond made that fear less palpable, or it feel less true. And that insight of my brain saying, oh, no one's going to want to hear about this. This is your issue.
Mm.
Da, 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 da. The things that we tell ourselves of, oh, you could just lose weight. That beautiful comment that I'm just like, oh my God, we could just lose weight. Oh my God, you guys.
Oh
Right.
my
So,
God.
so that ended up letting me to go to Amy Poehler Smart Girls. And it took me a full 2 years before I wrote about body image. I
Oh,
wrote
okay.
about raising your hand in class. I wrote, notes to my 12-year-old self about picking up the phone to call your friends to organize events versus waiting for someone to call you and invite you over. I wrote these things about stuff I had been struggling with, but it took me a full 2 years until I finally wrote about how I stopped swimming when I was 12 because I had gained weight and I could not handle making that 20-foot walk from the locker room to the pool because of the shame I felt about my body. And when I say I quit swimming, I mean I quit the thing I love the most in the world. I started swimming when I was 3. Like, you could not keep me out of the pool. Like,
Yeah.
the water was my joyous, happy place. And I quit the thing I loved most in the world because I had such hot shame over my larger body. And so I wrote this piece at 25 because I was finally getting back in the pool at 25. So basically, I went to my local Y and I was like, okay. And what writing these notes to my 12-year-old self was really great about is kind of like when we talk to kids or teach, we have to practice what we teach, right? We have to practice it. So we're like, I can't tell you to do this unless I'm ready to do it.
Yeah.
At least that's my belief.
Yeah.
And so I basically was like, okay, if I'm telling my younger self to be brave, if I'm telling my younger self to not make herself small, I have to really walk that walk. And so I basically went to my local Y, and I was living at home before I moved to Los Angeles, and I was working like 4 jobs, and I was commuting into the city for work. And I like took one day to go to the pool, and I wouldn't let myself bring a towel with me. So I wouldn't cover my body as I walked from the locker room through the hallway because I was like, okay, I really want to be present. And so I was thinking as I'm like about to like panicking, I was like, okay, let's think about your legs. Your legs are so strong, right? Like, your
Yeah.
legs have taken you on adventures all over the world. Your legs have helped your friends move. Like, your belly is where your belly laughs live. Arms give the best hugs in the world. And that inner talk really helped me get to the edge of the pool and then jump in and then go, oh God, I've missed you, to the water,
Mhm.
right? I've missed the weightlessness and freedom and just the movement of my body. I've always been a very strong swimmer, and just the movement of how strong I am in the water, how much I love spinning around and moving my body. And just every time, during this path, I talk a lot about it's not just feeling empowered, it's also grieving a bit, right? Of the
Yeah.
years you lost.
Yeah.
The years you lost when you told yourself you couldn't do this yet.
Yeah.
Right?
100%.
I'll be able to swim again when I fit into this size. I'll be able to swim again when I'm worthy of being in public in a bathing suit, right? Yet, when those dangerous, dangerous words. And so for me, writing that piece, even though I was having this great moment for myself, it was still really scary. I remember I sent it to my editor and I felt nauseous. I was like, and she's like, I loved it. I was like, did you? Did you? It was really scary. It was really scary.
Yeah.
But I wrote basically a note to my 12-year-old self called Take the Plunge. And it was a letter begging me not to quit swimming and get back in the pool. And it talked about the truth, which is once we start making ourselves small physically, we start making ourselves small emotionally, mentally, and how we take up space. So I was like, this will lead you to stop raising your hand in class. This will mean you don't think you're ready to go out for that job. This will mean, and how insidious that self-loathing and limitation is for us. And, starting at a young age, I went on my first diet at like 10, 11, and so just that element of, oh my God, I've lost so much joy and opportunity because I wouldn't let myself do it, because I limited myself from that 20-foot walk into applying for jobs, into going after things comedically, going after stuff for my work. Cause I was like, oh, people are going to judge me, or I'm not worthy, or I'm not ready yet.
Mm.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that for me was really scary,
Yeah.
as most of the things in this journey to make this movie. And I ended up seeing that response to the Amy Poehler Smart Girls piece is why I wrote this movie, because
Yeah.
hundreds of people, especially women, not just from across the US, but around the world, were commenting how they had quit running, quit tennis, quit, wearing shorts since they were 10, right? Because, right.
Alyssa,
Of
she
saying,
quit dancing.
right.
Yeah.
Honestly, and this is what I love about it, is it's saying you are so not alone.
Yeah.
And I looked and realized how alone we all felt in that moment, right? And how alone and isolated we felt with our own self-loathing, self-hatred, embarrassment, shame. When in reality, that turns our brain into like an echo chamber, which makes it worse, right? And the only way we can make that shame less powerful is if we start talking about it. And so my brain immediately went, oh my God, I wish we all had something to make us feel less alone when we needed it. And then I had the idea for Empire Waist, which was, what if you could make yourself whatever outfit you wanted in the world? So it wasn't that clothes aren't available. It wasn't that, but you didn't feel worthy to wear it. So
Yeah.
that's where it comes from. And this is why it was so important for me to process my own stuff, because when I first wrote the movie, I moved to LA. I had been in entertainment for like 5 years, which naturally means I had many, many jobs because it didn't pay.
Yeah.
And so, doing comedy, I had a really successful web series where the more successful it got, I ended up starting to get those like really shady comments of people about my body. And I was like, oh my God, cool. I feel terrible. But I got picked up by these managers, which sounds shady. They were like very official. And they didn't really know what to do with me, because at the time, a lot of the shows and stuff going on were like very like raunchy comedy for women, and I hadn't come out yet. And so I was just like, I don't know, I don't want to write dick jokes, I don't know why.
Question
But I
mark.
also I just don't know, I don't know. But I also I wrote family comedy, like that's what I love, that's what I do. And so I basically was like, give me a month, I'm going to write the movie in my head. Which I did it in a month. I basically yanked all the trauma out of my body and put it on the page, which, fast forward, not a great idea.
That's fair.
Definitely not a great idea.
Not a great idea. You know what would be better than that? Anything.
Therapy?
Right? Anything. And so, but I basically rented a co-working office, because I was freelance copywriting and editing. So I was always on my computer in my house, not leaving. And I was like, this isn't great for my mental health. I put a ton of pressure on myself to write the best version of the script possible, which is its own version of anxiety and perfectionism. And I basically yanked all the trauma out of my body, wrote the script, and gave it to my managers. And I was exhausted. I was broke. I basically thought they were going to be like, now you get $1 million, which is not how it went. But my managers, who are at this big fancy office with, valet parking and bottled water and whatever, they went, oh my God, we love it. Female empowerment is so in right now.
Oh.
This was 2015. Female empowerment is so in right now, but there are too many women in this movie, not enough men. And
Immediate
I can't
rage.
imagine the teacher. I know, I can't imagine the teacher being a woman. She's way too funny.
To you, a comedian.
Your faces were my heart. I know. And also I wrote for Amy Poehler's Smart
Yeah.
Girl. She's my hero.
That reminds me of that South Park episode where it's or the running joke in South Park where it's oh, women can be funny, girls can be funny too. Oh, blah.
I know.
Gross.
Right? So, and this is why I mentor and why I put that script away, was I knew in my gut they were wrong, but I was also 26 years old.
Yeah.
And by everything on paper, I had exactly what everyone should want as a writer in Hollywood, right? I had this big manager who, was going to take a chance on me, and I should have just said yes, because look at this office, look at the valet parking, look at the bottled water, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in my gut, I knew they were wrong. I knew they were wrong, but I couldn't say it because I didn't think I was valid enough to say it. I didn't think I had enough experience to say it, even though in my gut, I knew it was wrong. So they basically were like, when can we get the next draft? I was like, in a month. And y'all quit comedy, went into advertising, moved across LA to the West Side. My friends in comedy thought I was dead. I just went fully off the radar. And I did not touch that script for 4 years.
Wow.
Which is too long. That is too long between drafts for any writers listening. That is too long. But I realized how burnt out I was, how broke I was, and was putting all this energy into being like, well, maybe I should just make it the way they think because I'll get paid faster. And I was like, no, 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 no. But I also realized how much trauma I had not processed
Mhm.
that I put on that page. And so for me, I needed to take care of myself. And it took me a year and a half before I could even start writing again creatively. I was a copywriter. So I was like writing about like luxury cars
Yeah.
and like, like super, super, super comedic. But I love the people I worked with. Like
I do have a question that will lead us into that.
Hey everyone, did you know that the Fab Fatties are on Patreon? Yes, we are, and you can follow us for more behind the scenes chaos. We have bloopers, we have Allie raging, we have, me climbing out windows. I don't know, we just have a bunch of crazy stuff over there. Yeah, so you can find us on Patreon. That's
P-A-T.
PATR
EON
EON.com
/ the Fab Fatties.
PATE
No.
PA.
PATREON.
That's what I said.
.com / the Fab Fatties.
And we will see you over there.
So one of the things that we read in a published interview with you is the whole idea of like you recognizing you can't tell people to go love themselves when you couldn't love yourself, right? And that did lead you to that time away from the script, but also that time of the self-work and addressing all the trauma you just said you dumped onto the page. So it's funny because sometimes we do talk about faking it till you make it. And I think there is some merit into it. Faking it till you make it, you're still taking little baby steps on the way to confidence. You're trying it on. You're trying on the shoe. You're thinking, can this fit me? Does it work for me? And it can build confidence.
I just had this thought in my head how, for a while, like the whole body positivity movement was like, wear the bikini. You have to wear the bikini. And it's like, no, you don't. You don't. You don't have
really
to wear
don't.
the bikini. Wear what makes you feel the best, right?
Honestly, and taking that ownership over what you want to wear, right? Like
Yeah.
I have a lot of friends who are Muslim and like wear hijab and cover themselves up. And
Yes.
but like, their sense of style, like a lot of them are like, I express myself in this way, and this is how I feel comfortable, and this is how I feel powerful, right?
Yes.
Instead of going like everyone has to do it this one way. I'm like, that's the same thing, but the different pendulum, right?
Yes.
You're like,
Yeah.
no, you are still unique and an individual. And I am glad there are so many other options. I think we definitely swung back a lot post-pandemic of just like what's available at the big stores, like in the affordable,
Yeah.
which is its own, wild. But hopefully using this movie to really bring to the fact that so many of us have the money to go and want to wear the clothes and want access and don't want to have cold shoulders all the time. What's with the cold shoulders?
We don't know
I'm
what's
just-
with the cold shoulders.
What's with the cold shoulders? They're like, we have to ventilate fat people. I'm like, what's going on? It's just so wild. So yeah, no, I love seeing folks and like, especially, and like, we know it, right? How if someone is in a bigger body or are disabled or whatever. And when I see somebody wearing an outfit that looks like stunning, and I'm a drive-by complimenter as is, but like,
I love that.
commenting and saying like, I love your look. I love your outfit. Like brings me so much joy because that person did the work to track down those items of clothing, did the
Yeah.
work to put that outfit together to find something that worked for their body, that they wanted. And so I'm always like, I see you, and I love everything happening. Have a great day.
Yeah.
Right.
Now listen,
So,
I will just I'm not a cold shoulder girly, but
right.
I will stand up for a cold shoulder girly because listen, I may not be a cold shoulder girly. My mom is. I know
There
some
you go. You know
grandmas are,
what?
right?
You're right.
It's a gateway drug to a sleeveless girly, right? It is. So
I love that.
there's so
I
many
love
people, that like to, this was a discourse that was on Threads of I want to say a month or two ago that my friend Leah was like spearheading, and I loved it for her because there was another creator who was like, ugh, why are we still making cold shoulder tops? Nobody wants them. Nobody buys them. And it's like, well, actually, yeah, my mom still buys them, right? And people are
There
still
you go.
buying them because they're not there yet, right? They're not
Right.
comfortable showing their arms, right? I used to be a cold shoulder girly, right? So instead of like I hated the way that other creator presented it. Like, ugh, why are we
True.
doing this? Nobody wants this. It's like, let's not make people feel bad about the fashion choices that they make,
I love
right? Just
that.
because you don't like it, that's okay, right? So
Exactly.
now
It's saying,
if we look at cold shoulder tops as the gateway drug to sleeveless
Sleeveless.
girlies,
I like
right?
that.
That's how we reframe them for ourselves, right?
Yeah, and really it's just letting brands know more variety, please.
Yes, please.
that's exactly it,
Yeah.
right? It's saying, hey, can we branch out? Can we branch out?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's just being like, we're just people in fat bodies. We just want to wear the same clothes, just in a bigger size and not just wider, because that's not how the body
Oh my
works,
God.
right?
Yeah.
Like there's some great like folks out there who are doing like patterns for bigger bodies of being like, this is physically what bigger bodies, how like the differences are, right? So in a bigger body, you don't just want to be wider, you also want to have like larger armholes, right? Instead of being,
Yes.
so it's just the breakdown of the basic structure.
I'm interested in that idea of like it's hard to tell people to do something that I can't do myself. So what did that self-worth work look like for you?
That is such a great question. And I'm so glad you brought it up, because we talk about fake it till you make it. Like Mima talks about it in our education curriculum that's going to be coming out the same day the movie launches, which we're so excited about. There is definitely a fake it till you make it in what we do, especially as women in this industry, especially as anyone who is historically underrepresented. You have to walk in with confidence, considering the amount of pushback you're going to get just naturally by our
Yeah.
lovely patriarchal society.
Yeah.
Right. So, but, and here's where I draw the line. If your work is harming you, if you feel like you can't, like you're leaving something every time you send out a post, or you feel like don't feel like your authentic self. And I say this as someone who deals with depression and anxiety. That was a big part of my work, is learning how to read my emotions and process and figure out what's true versus what my brain is telling me is true. Right. So like the classic, is everyone mad at me? Right. That's its own issue. And that's something I dealt with
Classic.
when I know, right?
Both of us.
I just like every time I know, right? I'm like, everyone's mad at me, right? Everyone's just lying that they like this movie. Like that my brain will do that. And I'm like, I've had people come up to me. I'm like, those were real people, right?
Yeah.
Saying how much it meant, saying at live readings, which was a huge part of this. So I will say, and I was just talking with the creator about this, because so much of what we do is output, 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 right? Is being like, well, I have to keep going, otherwise I'll lose this credibility I've built. And my
Mhm.
big thing is, if you are feeling depleted from doing your creative work, if you're feeling harmed by it, even if that just means your anxiety levels are higher, do not be afraid to take that step back and take ownership of your mental health and physical health.
Mm.
Because and this is as the queen of burnout, right? Queen, crown, 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 right? I know, right? As the queen of burnout.
You're doing some calling out right now.
I know, but this is the thing.
Yeah,
and I
we're
say,
listening.
this is again something I have to hold myself to. And luckily, I have an amazing producer, Crystal Collins, who's been with me since day one. And like I have learned to say, I don't have the energy for this original deadline, because my depression's gotten worse during this time of year, right? So I'll be like, okay, that deadline I originally said, I can't do it. And instead of going, I'm so sorry, I'm the worst, I'm like, I physically, my 100% isn't matching when I originally set this deadline. So a lot of that is learning to honestly show yourself grace. Like that's the big thing. And it's not even calling out, it's just being really kind to yourself. That is the only way how I got through this, was learning to show myself grace and kindness. And also just really like cognitive behavioral therapy was a huge part of it, of learning. And we have a cognitive behavioral therapist, a child adolescent psychologist, who is part of our curriculum for that reason, because they specialize in those cyclical thoughts in our head that seem so true. And everyone's mad at me. I don't deserve to be in this room. I should make myself small. All these different things that we say are internalized, or I'm not worthy of this job. I'm not worthy of this opportunity. I'm not worthy of being taken seriously. And really challenging those to say, is this true? Or is this a feeling?
Mhm.
And for the most part, it's not true.
Yeah.
And the most beautiful thing that came out of this process for me, if I'm very honest in terms of my journey, was really facing those inner thoughts and my inner critic head on. And instead of saying, oh yeah, I'm not worthy of taking up space, it's going, hey, this body made this movie. This body and brain made my cast and crew feel safe and protected them, right? From both like physically, we were at the height of COVID,
Mhm.
but also mentally and emotionally, like creating space for people to talk about the body image stuff, having one-on-one meetings with my actors on Zoom, having my two leads and three leads, Mia, Mima, and Isabella, who play Sylvie, who's the mean girl, have them meet together and really pull apart where their characters were coming from and make sure they knew they had each other's backs as well as me having their back in those scenes
Mhm.
so they could feel safe once that were when they were in it and also when they left.
Yeah.
And like Mia, their terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. We had to film two really brutal scenes in terms of emotions. And at the end of that day, I knew they would go back to their hotel room and be alone. And I was like, you know what? How about we don't do that? Because I know for me, if I go through something alone and then I'm alone with my thoughts, right? Just as empathy, I'm like, okay, I would go alone and then go back home and feel terrible about myself and then wake up the next day and still feel terrible. So I was like, hey, Mia, do you all want to go out to barbecue tonight with invite the cast and crew, my treat? We're going to go out after we wrap. We wrapped at like 6:30. And instead of them focusing the whole day on, or going home afterwards, it was like, hey, do you want to come to barbecue tonight? Like giving them the power. And like, even for like, we have a scene where they get weighed at the doctor's office. And I knew how triggering that scale would be because it was triggering for me, right? Like that was youth of being like just the sound of the metal sliding across like, gives me like physical like regurg, right? So I basically snuck up into that room before they came up and I printed out this amazing photo of them in this incredible suit that they had done with their friends for like senior year of high school. And I printed it out and I wrote, I'm Mia fucking Kaplan. Like remember. And I put it on the scale. So when they walked in and saw this thing that like would elicit dread in a plus size person and many people, they burst out laughing and kept it for themselves for afterwards. So in that way, learning how to take care of myself, learning how to process my own feelings about body image, helped me take care of my cast and crew, helped me listen to other people and open up. That's what we were talking about. Like, I love the conversations I've had about body image with people because we just jump right in, right? We jump right in. And I'm never like, I'm going to judge you because I'm like, no, talk to me. This is the judgment-free zone. Like you are trusting me with your stories. And that's where it came down to was I did 17 live readings across the country with this script, which is too many, but was worth every second because no audience got the same script twice. And they felt permission to not only share what they liked and what confused them and what they wanted to see differently and call out things that needed to be changed, but they also felt empowered to share their own stories with me. From someone coming up to me and going like, I have been in tears for an hour, to someone, a woman in her 70s, who I've known for a long time. She came up to me and she goes, oh my God, I have to call my adult daughters. I thought I was helping because of the way she spoke to her own daughters, right?
Can you call
And
my
so this
mom?
movie, honestly, I just like this movie, and that's exactly it, right? This movie, a lot of it is a comedy. It is a laugh out loud romp, and that's what I wanted it to be because my friends, and I'm sure it's the same for y'all, and this is what I love seeing about the way you're building your community. Our friends, when we're at our lowest, when we're struggling, when we're having these, because it's a journey. I'm not like, it's a light switch. I figured it out, right? That's absolute garbage. But our friends are usually the ones who see us as the most powerful version of ourselves because they see us without the layers of self-doubt. And so like for me, when I talk to my friend and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm just really struggling with this. She's like, you're Claire motherfucking Ayoub. Do you know what you've done? And like we hype each other up, right? Like we hype each other up. And like even the day before we filmed the education curriculum, I had a total meltdown because I was going to be on camera hosting. I had a total meltdown of I was feeling really exhausted. We basically produced the whole thing with my production company and P&G, who were amazing to work with. They funded it, so it's a free curriculum for anyone to use. It's going to be on YouTube and it's going to be a downloadable PDF. So it's 7 videos, 15 downloadable activities, all vetted and free. Like it's amazing. But the idea of me being on camera and how I'd feel about that overtook every single positive element to be that scream I used to hear in my head when I was younger of, you're not ready. You should have dieted. You should have worked out because you're going to be on camera and you're not worthy of being in that space. It wasn't, and I was like, who am I to tell? And I legit had a meltdown with my two friends because I naturally waited until the day before to go shopping for stuff because I was writing and producing. And I was so scared I wouldn't find anything to wear that I broke down in Macy's. And my two friends who are my producers on this project, my producer, Crystal Collins, my production supervisor, Lizzie Bryce, who are both plus size women, looked at me and they're like, are you okay? And I was like, I just don't want to be on camera. Like, I'm going to have it. And they were like, okay. Because in my head, that was totally normal.
Yeah.
That was like a normal escalation. So I was feeling like, and they were like, whoa, 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 whoa. And what was so helpful about them was they were like, instead of saying, you don't have to feel that way, you're amazing, they were like, we're going to go pull some clothes for you. Stand right here and feel your feelings. And we're just going to pull a bunch of clothes. Go hang out in the changing room, take some deep breaths, and we're here for you. And what was so amazing was just having a safe space to talk about how I was struggling. And the fact that I had already talked to my cast, and we talk about it in the movie, like for both Lenore and Kayla, that they're not just like, and at the end of the movie, I love myself. And that's forever. It's a journey. We are always going to have days where we feel like shit about our bodies, right? We're always going to have days where we don't feel confident because we're human beings, right? And this is why, for me, a huge part of this journey for me has been going from the body positive mentality, which is still really important, to body neutrality, right? Of being like, this is my body and look how powerful I am. Look at what I'm capable of. And Mia Kaplan actually brought that up in like my first meeting with them. When they were like 18 years old, like they were just graduating high school, and we met on Zoom, and my producer and I like turned to each other afterwards and we're like, who is this brilliant human being speaking about body neutrality, speaking about being in the industry since they were like 8, and just the comments they received about their body and how, and just really, that's been a big shift for me. And really listening to the community talking about body neutrality, really listening to biases I had, like all different things, and really, even how I process the feedback we get sometimes of, you could just lose weight, or like just cut out the Doritos, or oh my God, I love it, you're promoting obesity. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm just getting a check. Are you kidding me? Like, it's wild.
It's hard being
right?
glamorous. It's really hard being glamorous.
It is, yeah.
It's really hard.
We do have some questions about casting though, so you keep kind of like moving us to our next section.
Well, I'm listening. I'm like so engaged in the conversation for so many different reasons. One of the things that I find really interesting is I am a theater girl. Went to school for theater, performing arts. I know, born and raised in New York, and something that I think was really ingrained in me as a young actor was like, you accept the opportunities. Like, it's always a yes. Yes, 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 yes. And I got to college and I got cast in a show. And I played a fat character, but the fat character was comedic, as it should be, because I'm fucking funny.
I agree.
But all she did was make jokes about her eating food. The entire show. I was actively on stage for the bit, stuffing food in my face. And I think at a point in that I was like wearing it like a badge of honor, like this is who I am, and like this is what it's going to be like if I'm going to pursue a career. And the work was painful. I suffered for the art, and
I was gonna say, how did it make you feel?
Yeah, girl, not good. It was, I definitely was thriving in my eating disorder at the time because I just needed coping skills. And I was away at college, so I don't have to see any family. No one sees me, right? And I literally didn't have to eat. I didn't have to pretend for anyone. So, really sick.
No.
And I almost feel like it made it worse because I went on to get nominated from the performance, and like, I feel like it was trying to be good. Like, it was trying so hard, and it was horrible. And There was even a hidden message in the script, which is because I was a fat character, no one wanted to marry me. I mean, my character was obnoxious. I'm not gonna like be like I was such a great person, but there was a forced arranged marriage at the end, and the other character I was with like didn't want to touch me, didn't want to be near me, and it was all very fat phobic in it. So
I'm sure that made you feel amazing.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so angry on your behalf. I just want
You
to
know,
say.
it's taken me years to realize that I probably shouldn't have done that. Like, I didn't. Why did I do that? I don't know
Can I
why.
tell you? I'm gonna interrupt you because I am
Please.
emotionally a mom. They call me Mama Claire on this movie for a reason, and here's what I'm gonna tell you. The person who is really fucked up is the one who wrote that part, and the people who chose that role, and the people who thought that was okay. I lasted as an actor, and this is why I love taking care of my actors as well as my crew. I lasted as an actor for 2 weeks.
Mm,
2 weeks because I couldn't handle the stereotyping of my body as the quirky fat friend or the like super horny fat neighbor who like all they did was talk about her boobs or like what. And I lasted for 2 weeks because I was like, oh, this will trigger me forever. And it's why I take care of my actors and why in this movie specifically, no one ever makes fun of their own body. We rarely see our main character Lenore eating. We don't see her having issues with food visually because I didn't want people to freeze frame that and go, see, she should have just not done that. I wanted people to see her as a human being, right? And this is why it's really important to take your experience and as messed up as it is, those moments, as much as they hurt, and they do hurt, and that pain is real, and working through that pain, and just not even working through it of being like, let's get to it. It's just being like processing
yeah.
is so important, is because remember that you have the power to change that story and change that experience for the creative projects and opportunities and just what you're doing here, right? Of making a space safe and also saying that kind of storytelling is not okay. Like Mia speaks really beautifully about the reason they wanted to do this project is they were like, my body wasn't being used as a joke
Yeah.
because they were in the same experience. But for them, it also happened at like 13. Can you imagine? Right. And like looking at that, and I'm sure, and you know, we speak a lot about taking the roles that we're supposed to be happy with, or always playing the mother or the grandmother instead of the
Yep.
ingenue,
Yes.
right? Because they're like, oh, you're soft and you know, whatever. And you're like, what? You know, and looking at that, right? I mean, don't get me wrong. I played Yenta and Fiddler on the Roof in high school,
Nice.
which fun fact, there were like 2 Jewish kids in that entire cast, right? I was just like, we should have chosen something else. And like, I mean, my best friend was Golda and I crushed it, right? Crushed it. But I also, you know, would look like an elderly woman and like I had like, you know, liver spots all put on my face and like all these different things. But man, I crushed it. But also, there's a reason I lasted for 2 weeks in acting. There's a reason I teach my own actors, I mentor them, I mentor a lot of other people who do not see themselves represented on screen. And my advice and why I love mentoring to support them on this journey is to say, if you do not see what you want on screen, write it and make it, because we are not original enough thinkers to be the only people on earth who want to see this kind of representation.
Absolutely.
Who are tired of what you experience, let alone as an actor, but also as an audience of saying, I am feeling self-conscious about myself as a fat person, or I'm just feeling self-conscious because someone I love is fat and this is not how they act. And this is not making me feel good about them. Right. And it's just looking at that and why, when it comes to the casting, when it comes to storytelling, when it comes to the choices about how our characters are seen, right? Because that's what media is. Take those feelings you had and turn it into something proactive and create what you want to see. That's what my producer, Crystal Collins, and I did from day one. Before we hired anybody, we basically processed the worst work experiences we had ever had.
Wow.
And we're like, okay, what kind of environment, in addition to the movie and its content, what kind of environment do we want to create on set? And that came down to communication. It came down to mutual respect, not just respect beyond the director, but hey, PA, you deserve to have the power to raise your hand and say something's not working or you're uncomfortable without the fear of being yelled at. Right. And that also came down to when it came to our physical and, triggering material on set. I vetted this script with psychologists, social workers, in addition to people who've had this experience, because I wanted to make sure it didn't harm the people making my dream happen unnecessarily, as well as my audience. So what you experience is something that you can bring into your work and know that it's valid
Yeah.
because you felt mocked, you felt uncomfortable, you felt ashamed. And when it comes to art, when it comes to representation, I'm a big believer you should always feel confident in the position you're in, even if that means you're playing the antagonist, even if it's even for my mean girl character here, right? In the movie, she has her own body image issues, and we touch on it. And there's a reason why um there's a certain, I love talking about this. So I basically she controls her friends' food. She controls everything about them. She's a very controlling person. And I just want to say Isabella Piscani, who plays Sylvie, is the kindest person. I would sing after every take. I'd go, Isabella is a nice person, and I'd make everyone sing it with me. Speaking of fellow theater kids. Um, but basically I was talking to a social worker at like a friend's birthday about the movie, because I basically talked about my body image for at least 4 out of the 5 years. There was like year 4, I was like, I can't talk about my body. I just need to be left alone for a little bit. But then now I'm back to it. But I basically told them about Sylvie and how she controlled her friend's food. And this person basically went, whatever you do, do not show what she's eating. And my
Wow.
brain went, what are you talking about? Because as a filmmaker, right, we'd be like, okay, so we're going to do an overhead shot of the
Yeah.
table to show who perfectly, right? Because that's, and she goes, whatever you do, do not show what she's eating, because someone struggling with an eating disorder will see her, want to look like her, and take a photo of that food and replicate it for themselves. And this is why I talk about it at every film festival I go to. Bringing in experts, especially if you're working with triggering material, like what you experienced should have been mixed early in that role.
100%. But I think this is where like I get so into it. Like look at how much work that you've put in to create a safe space. The industry is so ridiculously far behind that we're just starting to get intimacy coaches on set and
I know,
normalizing
right?
that. Like if we are doing work and we are showing these stories, we need to have people in the industry who are going to go to the lengths for that, because that psychiatrist is right. I have an eating disorder. I would have done exactly that. I would have been like, what food are they demonizing? I'm not going to eat that. Oh, don't eat the brownie. Got it. Don't eat the brownie. Like we hold on to these things. Right. And
Limitation.
right. So here you are as a creative. Like, how do we get other people, other creatives, to take this work seriously, regardless of what it is, right? We were just talking before we started recording about It Ends With Us, you know, and how it's demonstrating domestic violence on screen. Like, how do we make sure that that set is safe for those actors doing the work, you know?
And you have, and that's the, and can I just say, I love your passion, because that is what makes change happen.
Yeah.
And taking that power into everything you do. Because, and I've been told from people in the industry that told my actors in front of me, oh my God, Claire created this amazing safe space. This is so rare. And I hope you appreciate it, because you're never going to experience something like this again.
Oh,
Take that for a second. And let me tell you, and this is the thing to remember about Hollywood not doing it. It just takes work, right? It's free. Treating people well, being mindful, doing the research
yeah.
is for the most part free, because people, experts, like if I've experienced anything, I love combining comedy and health education, like my 2 favorite things. And I love bringing in experts and talking to them. And for the most part, they're like, I would love to share vetted information. I've had people, doctors on panels I do for my show, the Gyno Kit, I've tried to pay them. They're all reproductive health experts. And I try to pay them a stipend to join me. And they're like, I have a captive audience for an hour. I normally see a patient for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Right. we're willing to help you. The difficult thing that I've seen and addressed, and I am not by far not the only director. I can name two just off the top of my head who are doing this work right now, which is Suchi Talati, who did Girls Will Be Girls, and Jennifer Esposito, who wrote and directed Fresh Kills. I met both of them at Annapolis Film Festival, and all three of us from all different, areas and all different genres, everything, the safety of our cast and crew, physically and mentally, were vital for all three of us. And all three of us have award-winning films. That is not,
Yeah.
a fluke.
Yeah.
The work is better. The work is better when your cast and crew feel safe. That can be on an emotional movie, a comedy, that can be on a freaking superhero movie. When your cast and crew feel safe, they do their work better. That is across industries, right? And what that starts with is clear communication, mutual respect, and making sure the door is open for disagreements, and respecting that someone saying something isn't working isn't a comment on your character. Or if you mess up, which I did, right? I'm a human being. And what we do is go, okay, how do we do this better? And you listen, right? Listen instead of react, fighting that need and really supporting people. So what I'm saying is, a lot of us are out there doing it. You all are doing it, just in creating this space and calling out that it's not normal. Because I'm sure your listeners are like, yeah, wait, same, right? Which is why you have solidarity. And that's how you make a change. And what we're really hoping, I work a lot with the Blacklist, they have been my bedrock throughout this whole process. They're led by Franklin Leonard, who basically created a space for unpublished scripts and like writers to meet directors, producers, production companies. That's how I found my lawyer. That's how UTA found me in the beginning for this project. And, Franklin taught me, or just in general, first of all, that as a creator, you are the CEO of your creative work. So your agent, manager, lawyer works for you. So make sure if they're not representing you correctly or the way that you want to be represented, find somebody else, like that empowerment. But also, they have been blown away. I shared the movie and our education curriculum. They've known this script since 2019, since I first put it out publicly, that they were like shocked to see how true to the original script the end version was, and the amount of work that went into our casting, which shout out to Rory Bergman and her amazing casting team, who led our nationwide casting call, which was urgent and vital to make sure this film matched the page, which is why I directed it, right? Because I knew I could have handed the script. I could have sold the script. I had many offers. But I knew I wanted to keep the tough stuff in the script in addition to the comedy, to make sure it wasn't just like, and I love myself da, 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 at the end. And two, that our cast reflected plus size bodies, not what the industry loved to send me or send all of us, which is what I call a Disney plus, which is a size 8 with a round face.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. That's not a plus size person. And I even met up with an actor who had auditioned for the role of Kayla, and she's amazing. I love her, and I mentor her now. But she was like, and I felt honored to interview and everything, but she's like, I'm a size 10. Like, I shouldn't have been in that room, but I'm glad I met you. And I was like, you're right. And like, now I work with her because she wants to be working in like more fantasy projects and like isn't getting cast as a dark skin plus like a larger Black woman, right? And she's like, everyone is like a fairy nymph, tiny elf person for all the casting. And I was like, then you're going to write something, even if it's sketches, even if it's TikToks, whatever, where you are cast in this world in that role, because you can do that, because you are not the only person who wants to see yourself this way. But when it comes to the Blacklist, they're fully on board with us of using Empire Waste and the way we made this film across the board as a case study, more than a movie, right? Of saying, hey, casting, you do not have the body types we were looking for. And why? Because in addition to bodies skewing towards 0 and 2, which is way below the national average, right? Which is a 14-16 for women. You do not consider plus size bodies, disabled bodies, different body types as valid as of investment. And that's a problem, because let me tell you, when we did our nationwide casting call, we had 3,500 applications come through. And we were blown away by the sheer amount of talent across the country. And can I tell you, so many theater kids on there.
Yeah, I bet.
So many people who were acting and loved it. And it was their first audition, which is why I loved working with Rory Bergman, because she took care of these folks to make sure, just like me, they felt safe and secure and didn't. And also, like, I kept people updated on TikTok about like where we were and thanking them instead of making them just get a cold email, right?
Yeah.
Being like, you or not
Yeah.
hear anything at all, right? And acknowledge that you auditioned for something that mattered to you. And that takes bravery, right? Because it does. But beyond that, I met people who we didn't even cast, but I have sent to other filmmakers. I have sent to other folks, especially when it came to not only our plus size folks, but the sheer amount of disabled actors who
Yeah.
submitted. Holy cow, was the like just, and we didn't limit it to physical disabilities. Although that's my dog.
Yeah, I saw.
We
I've
didn't
seen the
limit
leg a
it.
couple times. Like just like
See a little,
the whole time
there's a
been
little
like, who's
disco
back
dog.
there?
I call him my assistant. He's my assistant. He
love
for
that.
5 years of working on the project, like on Zoom, he still doesn't know what a computer is.
That's okay.
So he just love to say hi, loves to say hi.
That's okay.
But basically, the sheer amount of talent we saw of folks, and I basically, yeah, like shout out Jade Thoralt is this amazing stand-up comedian who's fully wheelchair bound in San Francisco. And I still follow her career. Like she's brilliant. And like every time, so what was so great about that is it's a case study of saying, Hollywood, you dummies,
Yeah.
do the work.
Yeah.
Do the work. Right? Do the work. And if they won't do it, we'll do it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's why I was grateful for my studio of financially backing that nationwide casting call, because it is more expensive, right?
Mhm.
Majority of people want to do the barest lift. So they want to say, oh, well, that's not going to work. So let's not try.
Yeah.
And the name of my production company is legit Try Anyway.
I love that.
That is my motto. That is how I fight those inner critic things of you're not worth it.
Yeah.
I go, let me just try.
I
Yeah.
love
Let me
that.
try and I'll report back to you.
I
Yeah.
love that.
Right. And so that is like specifically a big part of it
Yeah.
is using it as a case study. Saying the talent's out there, invest in the talent. And Mima Yivu, who plays Kayla, was part of that nationwide casting call.
So I actually I want to go a little bit deeper on Kayla for a second, if that's okay. Or
Yes, please.
Mima. We have a question about Kayla. And this was kind of something that Rebecca and I have been chatting about, and wanted to ask you about, and want to ask you in a very gentle way. But it's kind of well known, right? In the fat community, in the body positive community, the body neutrality, the movement, right? That incredible Black fat women started this movement, right? And kind of led
they
the
did.
way.
And still do.
Yes, yeah. And kind of led the way for us, right? For us to come along and say, hey, they're doing it. We can do it too, right? They started doing it scared and showed us that we could do it too. And I'm curious how, because I mean, even watching the trailer, I feel like you've done something really incredible here. And we're curious how you were able to both give Mima, give Kayla this storyline where she is this beacon that leads Lenore to her purpose, right? While also letting Kayla be her own beacon, right? Because I think that's something that gets lost a lot. And I think in a lot of projects we've seen, there's so much work that's put on the backs of Black women. And it's just, they're so confident and so amazing. And it's like, oh, great, she can do it. She can do it. She can handle this. Right. And so I would just love to know what your process was there of making that space for Kayla. Yeah.
And honestly, can I just start by saying thank you for asking this question, and thank you for speaking about the work and history of Black women and like Black folks in general of the body positivity movement, especially because they don't have the privilege of white women in these spaces already. So
Yeah.
it's legit triple bravery.
We
Triple bravery,
also
triple
understand we're saying that as 3 white women sitting here.
right? Exactly. So my two big things when it came to Lenore and Kayla, both of them, I basically had a filter of information that I wanted to make sure they were represented properly. For Lenore, it was making sure she wasn't just seen as her issues with food.
Sure.
And for Kayla, it was making sure she wasn't just seen as the Black best friend stereotype,
Yeah.
let alone the fact Black best friend, that she had not only substance, but her role was not just to prop up the white character,
I love
right?
that.
That was the most urgent part of her character for me.
Mhm.
And one of the main reasons why, in addition to doing the live readings and doing my own work during those 4 years where I put the script away, it was really spent, in addition to working on myself, listening, right? Listening to Black creators, listening to people with backgrounds different than mine. And that is how I learned really about colorism in Hollywood,
Yeah.
right? About that it's always lighter skin, right? And how even the term fair skin versus dark skin is its own comment on morality, right? Of being like,
Yes.
they're fair, they're beautiful. Like, no, it's dark skin, right? Just this learning and listening of people who were brave enough to educate so many of us, which is vital. In addition to that, and in addition to at these readings, being like, please call out what's not working, and ensuring I had a diverse audience who felt empowered to speak up, which was scary for me in terms of like combating my own fragility of being like, oh God, they're going to say I did it wrong. They're going to say I'm
Sure.
racist, right? You're no. If I don't ask for support, if I brought in a DEI rep early to do to be a consultant on this project, Sydney Henriquez Payne, who's brilliant. She's her company Bridge and Ladder, which phenomenal, to do the professional pass, right? But if I didn't do any of that, and I only wrote this as a white person who has only lived in a white body, who has only struggled in the term of Western media and European beauty standards, if I only wrote not just for my plus size, like character, not just for Kayla, but for every character, I would be writing this out of stereotype instead of humanity.
Sure.
And my biggest challenge to myself was ensuring that when somebody who looked like a specific character saw themselves on screen or saw somebody who looked like them on screen, they would also feel like that person felt like them.
Yeah.
They were like, oh my God, or that's my grandma, or that's my,
Yeah.
and for Kayla, that was urgent and vital, and something that the two of them, people are like, oh, it's Lenore's the lead. It's the two of them
Yeah.
for a reason. It's a friendship love story. And that was something I really had to challenge myself on constantly and be really tough on myself constantly to make sure I wasn't writing on stereotypes, to make sure in early passes, right? I was like, well, Kayla's there for her friend. And the feedback I get, and also like unpacking feedback I got of people being like, it just feels like Lenore's getting pulled around by Kayla all the time. I'm like, okay, so Lenore needs her own agency, but also Kayla needs to feel like a fully fledged person who also, like, don't want to give things away, but also challenges her own confidence,
Mhm.
right? And we see she is not just a two-dimensional confident person. And what I love
Yeah.
about her characters, we get to meet her family in this film. And I loved specifically, originally the character was written as Afro-Latina. And when we met Mima, I was like, oh God, it's you. I was like, it's you. And Mima's family's from Togo. She's first generation American. She's from Togo. Her family speaks Ewe. And, I basically sat down with her and like her mom to talk about like what changes we would make to the script, what words we would use for grandmother, what languages the family would be speaking,
That's
right?
incredible.
And doing that work. Same thing with Daisy Washington, when who plays Marcy. Originally in the script, Marcy, who's disabled, who is also just the strongest person in the entire film, had crutches, and it was written so there's a scene where she chases away bullies and she slams her crutch against the locker, but Daisy is a wheelchair user. And so I was like, okay, how do we make this feel true to you? I'd like to write specifically speaking about what we were talking about before. Let's go over the jokes and make sure this is something you would feel good about. And I want to make sure the door was open for that communication. And the beautiful thing that I told my cast constantly was, if anything makes you uncomfortable, if anything doesn't feel true to you, I know the writer, it's me,
Yeah.
right? We can make those changes instead of being like precious about it. But I will say, if we are going to, even with all the work we did on that side, if we were to do a sequel, I would want to bring on a co-writer to specifically speak to Kayla's perspective
Yeah.
and her family's perspective. And that is something that, not that saying that the cast reached out to me like a week after we wrapped, and they were like, when are we miss each other? When are we going to do a sequel? And I was like, Mom's tired, right? But if we were to do something like that, or additional projects, like I have, like it's really fun. I have like a musical in the works, like all these different things. I would want to bring on a partner, not just a consultant,
Yeah.
but a partner to speak to that experience and bring it into the field, and that's why also I held on to the IP for this project, because I was hoping if it did well, I would be able to fund creators who aren't seeing themselves represented, right? To basically go, hey, your voice matters, because it does. I have so many friends in my circle of writers who are brilliant, and a lot of them are writing specific characters that they wish they could have seen on screen, just like I did for Empire Waits. So
Yeah.
it's saying, hey, instead of going to a student, an industry that goes, we don't think you're worthy of this story, we haven't seen it before, even though majority of audiences this summer were Black and Latino, like basically held up the box office for the first half of the summer. But how many stories
Yeah.
are based on people who look like them, let alone look like them, but also resonate with them?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it starts with having, when it comes to specifically Black women, it comes down to, and that's why I'm so excited for Natasha Rothwell's new series. She's a dear friend of mine. She's so brilliant. Is having Black women not only on screen, but in the writer's room
Yeah.
as your showrunner,
Yeah.
right? In charge of costuming, hair and makeup, all different elements of having their fingerprints all over it, and making sure they have the power to stand up and make something feel as authentic as possible. So even for us, when we were bringing on, because we did that listening, and hearing about Black actors or anyone with textured hair who was on set, and they had a hair team that had no idea how to handle them, and just basically put a headband on them, and they felt ashamed and uncertain and not taken care of. We basically, when hiring a head of our hair department, we were like, do you work with type 3 and 4 hair, right? Do you work with coarser hair, right? Do you have a specialty in this, to make sure our actors are taken care of?
Yeah.
Because that is part of taking care of your team, is making sure they have the resources they need, right?
Yeah.
So our hair team is phenomenal. Same thing with our makeup team, who specifically, and same thing with our cinematographer, Maria Rushi, when it came to making sure, when lighting, everyone was shown to their best ability.
Yeah.
Same thing when we were color correcting, making sure Mima, who has darker skin, wasn't lost because we didn't do the extra work to light her properly, which is us doing our job.
Yeah.
And that's some pushback you get about specifically dark skinned folks. They're like, well, it's too hard to light them. It's like, no, just do your job better.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why so many of us loved Insecure, because it was shot so beautifully.
Oh my God, I love
and
that
it's
show.
really right. But like that, and this is Issa Rae, who I just respect the shit out of, right?
Yeah.
Making sure across the board you had people not only telling the story, but making sure it came across as beautifully and powerfully as possible. And that comes down to knowing how to light a dark face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Knowing how, for us, Maria Rushi was an incredible partner to work with, because we had a height difference and body image difference, not even weight, but height difference of Holly at 6'4" to Daisy in her wheelchair at 4'8".
Yeah. Yeah.
A height difference, and we had bigger bodies that early on I was like, Maria, I don't want to only crop in on their face. I want to show full bodies, right? Because that is them taking space in the world. So that's why our dimensions are wider, to make sure we can have all of them in one shot without having to sacrifice, right? So it's just really doing the work. But as a white person, I can always be doing better. Always, right? And acknowledging that instead of getting complacent, and also acknowledging, again, that not every story is mine to tell.
Yeah.
And if I'm going to be writing a character who is different from me, I have to be talking directly to those people, hiring consultants to specifically speak to that role. And again, if we do a sequel, I'm bringing on a co-writer for Kayla, because I want to make sure it's not just me asking people what she'd be like. It's someone at my level with the same amount of power I have speaking to that experience.
I love that.
I do too. One of the things we're gonna have to wrap up here in a minute. But one of the things that's making me think about is, you know, we've talked to people in film and TV, and one of the common things we're getting is no one's taking chances these days. Everyone wants to just see the same thing. Can you just replicate something that already exists? And I just want to say a big kudos to not just replicating something that already exists, to seeing your film
Thank
as a case study, to seeing your process as a case study, to being willing to make a different process behind the making of the film and to have standards regardless of what's the norm and what's the regular way of doing it and the path of least resistance. So,
And
fuck yeah.
using your time to highlight that work, right? Because this conversation could have been all about you and your journey and, you know, the work that you've done, but you even used this space to share, to educate with the resources and
I'm
one
not
of
correct
those
on that
words
one. I don't know.
in place so that other people listening, you know, it's tangible, it's doable, and someone just has to fucking do it, and you fucking did it, and that is so badass.
And as you said, in that body, right? And
Yeah.
so, like, I love that
In
because
that body.
Barbara Butch said that about working in the doing the Olympics DJing. Is I DJ'd at the Olympics in this body, and that has become a little anthem for me. I teach in this body. I do a podcast in this body. I date somebody in this body. All
I
of that
piss
stuff.
off mediocre men on the internet in this
In
body,
this
and I love that
body!
for me.
Right? Well, I want to, speaking of tangible, and I'm so glad you brought this up. So this is why I love teaching. So if you are trying to, this is for my creators out there, this is for anyone who is writing and hitting that wall of being told this is too much of a risk, or they're blah. Skip going straight to a studio, skip the traditional route and try this. Find your audience first and meet them often. So that's what we did basically with those 17 live readings across the country. I met people face to face who not only on the creative side helped fill in the gaps, helped me confirm what was working and what needed to be fixed, but also on the marketing side, which is all studios care about, right? Is just being like, will this make us money back? I was like, I have over 1,000 people willing to buy tickets to this.
Yes.
Right? I had people donate $15,000 the first year I was working on this after coming to live readings. And I was working, you know, many jobs, and it enabled me to be able to pay my producer so she could leave her job earlier, right? So we could keep this going. But the most important thing to do is find your audience early and often. So this is something I specifically talk to with creators of color. Instead of going straight to a studio, start organizing live readings with people in your community to start. And this can be friends, but specifically people who are also not seeing themselves represented on screen in this genre, right? Or are only seeing themselves represented in stereotypes. Start with who you know and just start sharing the work and getting feedback. And then start bringing it to other places and testing it out and keep track of people's feedbacks. That's stuff I ended up using in my lookbook. And basically, at the end of those 17 live readings, which again was not a normal thing. It's not normal. And that came from my theater background. It came from me going, I can hear what works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I need you to tell me what doesn't, right? Coming from theater, of being like, okay, that joke killed. Like I would always be the one who like read the stage directions, even though most people are like, you should listen. I'm like, no, I want to catch all my typos and write down what works and what doesn't, right? Or like the joke that I loved that I kept in for 10 drafts. And I was like, no one has ever laughed at this. Goodbye, right? Goodbye.
Yeah.
Looking at that, this script resonated with people from 14 to 84.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
I'm going to say that again. 14
Well, that's
to
a huge
84.
age range.
It is for sure.
Oh, is my
It's the
wow
all
really loud?
caps
Sorry.
is happening.
So when I talk about this being, so when we were pitching this, even though this kind of story had been told in ways before, but not this way, 10 out of 10 of the studios we pitched to, wanted to work with us because of the market research of saying 14 to 84.
Yeah.
Right? And why? Because multiple generations saw themselves represented in this story. So ditto when we do the marketing, I tell my studio and I tell my distributor, Blue Fox, who's been wonderful. I'm like, don't just market this to tweens and their parents, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
This is for people in their 30s and 40s who were raised on America's Next Top
Hello.
Model. This
Seriously.
is for, right? This is for our parents and grandparents, specifically our mothers, right? I mean, diet culture, zeitgeist, right?
Yeah.
Almond moms, everybody who's old and are now being shamed for their menopausal and postmenopausal bodies,
Yep.
which makes
Thanks,
me
JD Vance.
want to scream,
Mhm.
right? Looking at that of people who didn't have social, who didn't see people like you speaking honestly about your journeys and taking up space with confidence, didn't see that, right? So that's why for us, the first unit of the education curriculum, our education curriculum in general, was shaped by those conversations, because the first unit is just for adults to unpack their own shit before they talk to children.
Well, hell. I love it.
Seriously, to just process what you were told about your body before you try to help. Just like that mom who came up to me, right, to say, I thought I was helping. She did.
Yeah.
Everything was done out
Yeah.
of love. And that's what you're going to see in the performance from Missy Pyle, who, holy cow, knocked it so far out of the park. Because, and that's why the 17 live reading were vital, because I needed to get Rachel, her character, right. Because it would have been so easy just to paint her as a cold bitch who was cruel
Yeah.
to her daughter. You realize her love is so strong, but it's wrapped in fear.
Yeah.
And that hurts. It hurts when
Mhm.
we think we're helping, right? And so
Yeah.
that first unit, just for adults to unpack everything before they talk to teens. And it's not just for parents, it's for tweens, teens, and adults. It's for caregivers of any kind, right? It's for adults to talk to each other about. It's for
Yeah.
us to just journal and think through these activities. And I made them specifically with social emotional learning expert, my old boss who I used to write curriculums for in my many, many jobs, and a DEI specialist who's also a social worker, who specifically, she's Chicana. She also works with kids of color and LGBTQ plus teens, right? To make sure that our advice and our feedback is truly inclusive. So like example, one of the things was like, if your child is having a tough day, like, or struggling with mental health, it's okay to do a, like, mental health day and stay home. And Noemi pointed out, she was like, most parents can't afford that.
Yeah.
And so because of that feedback, thank God, we struck it from the solution. Instead of a parent seeing that, or a caregiver seeing that and go, I can't provide my child with that. It's saying, you know what? It's not even an option. Don't worry about it. Right.
Yeah.
And ditto, asking questions in the curriculum about not just for BIPOC folks or underrepresented. I love historically underrepresented in terms of media. So like, instead of saying just for them, how did it feel not to see yourself represented on screen? But also for white folks to say, imagine what it would feel like not to see someone who looked like you on screen.
Mhm.
So also bringing in that empathy, right? And really seeing each other as human beings. And like my favorite part of this curriculum is like, in addition to activities, we have key vocabulary. So that way people can start learning. We have like European beauty standards in there.
Yeah.
We have body neutrality, body positivity, right? Really breaking it down. And at the end, we have like a whole page of resources from our experts and our health experts who are part of it. And of just being like, because I'm the child of medical folks. And so between
Gynecologist,
that
right?
and my education, OBGYN, baby.
Yeah.
That's why I went into comedy, baby. So and I'm a lesbian. So just, it was meant to be. But, which is also part of the reason I probably stayed in the closet for so long, because we were Catholic. But yes. So like, but looking at that, I wanted to make sure, based on those conversations I had, and this is why I talk about meeting your audience early and often, it's not just what your audience wants to see, it's what they need.
Yeah.
I kept hearing from people, what resources do you recommend? How do I make sure I don't harm my kid like this mom did in the script, even though we knew she didn't mean to.
Right.
How can I make sure? Because of that, that's why the curriculum is the way it is. It is designed with the audience in mind, because we met them every step of the way. So for anyone listening who wants to make a story that you feel like isn't represented, just go straight to your audience, workshop it, show that it needs to be made, get their feedback, and learn how to communicate that business wise too. This is the demographic who loves this project. Here are quotes from him. Here are how much they spend at the movies every year. this is valid.
Yeah.
We're going to be
Yeah.
emailing you with some questions.
No, literally.
Instead of saying, please, please, please make this movie, the way we pitched it was, hey, train's leaving the station. Want to get on?
I
Yeah.
love that.
I love that boss move. Well, I just want to thank you so much, Claire, and also I can't wait to I can't wait to watch the movie, but now I'm like really excited to dive into the educational stuff, and I could definitely
Yeah.
imagine a future episode where we start getting into the questions that are offered there. So I'm excited for it to help even facilitate our discussions with each other. So I really commend you on like the movie, your choices, but also making sure that it goes beyond this and that people can take, again, tangible things forward. But thank you so much for joining us and talking with us. I wish we had 3 more hours to talk
Literally.
because I'm enjoying it so much. But
I literally feel like we're getting like a free therapy session.
free therapy, free. I mean, you are teaching us, giving us some therapy thoughts. You might have called us out a little bit on some stuff
A
we're
lot
doing.
of it. A lot of it. It's fine.
But it's been good. It's been
Yeah.
needed, and
Yeah.
I'm excited to dive in more
Yeah.
into Empire Waste.
Thank
Yeah.
you. And honestly, right now, in addition to our movie trailer, our education curriculum trailer is up on our website. So you can check
Perfect.
it out at empirewastefilm.com/curriculum. And it has like a sneak peek at what we're doing. But no, and everything I've said to you is something I say to myself and my team and I say to ourselves. Like, these are conversations we have constantly. And I want to commend y'all for creating this space.
Thank you.
Because just like this movie, like, I can't imagine how I would have seen people differently. Like, there's a scene where the two of them, you see it in the trailer, are like on the bed, like holding each other. And I got emotional behind the camera, let
Mhm.
alone, being in an audience. But if I had grown up hearing and seeing folks like you, where I was like, wait, you look just like me. Like, you just,
Yeah.
and you feel confident, and also are talking about what you're struggling with and talking about fashion and how you deserve to take up that space, right? Would have made a huge difference.
Yeah.
So just thank you for what you do and the community you guys are creating
Well,
for
thank
folks,
you.
not
Thank
just
you
fat
so
folks,
much.
but folks to learn
Yeah.
and see us as human.
Claire, if people want to find you and support the work you're doing, where can they find you at?
Absolutely. So I am on Instagram at Claire Ayoub, and we're on Instagram at Empire Waste Film. And you can go to empirewastefilm.com to like learn about tickets. We're going to be in over 200 theaters across the country and in Canada, which
Amazing.
is really exciting. And then we're going to be released worldwide later this year, which is so cool.
So cool.
And I'm also on TikTok. I reactivated my TikTok, which is just me being really earnest and cheering people on. And I'm at it's Claire Ayoub. So I'll be doing a bunch of talks for anyone who loved hearing about like advice for writing. I'm going to be basically using TikTok to just educate folks on writing the stories you want to see.
BRB,
because
go
you
and
have the power
follow
to do so.
right now.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you so
I adore
much.
y'all.
Thank you,
Yes,
Claire.
thank you.
This is amazing.
What a joy. My heart's really full. And Max isn't expressing it, but he had a great time too.
Thank you for joining us, Max. We loved the vibe.
Yes.
We really did.
Like, he's like, I want a treat. I want a treat.
Wow. She is so impressive.
Yeah.
She is so impressive. I'm literally like, no, I literally am in awe. It is not common to find someone who is so passionate about the work that she's like, no, we're going to do it the right way every step of the
Yes.
way. And look at all of the work she put in. And I think we can see like what that means for her product, like
Yeah.
what
Oh,
that means
100%.
long term. And I just, wow.
I just love how like she really, God, she spent that whole time talking about how amazing everybody on set was, right? And just how much it truly showed, right? How much she believed in what she was doing and how much she believed in her story and what she wanted to put out there. And it's so incredible. And it really shows that like we can all do it, right? We
Yeah.
can all do it. And I think you had said something earlier about like, you don't have to go with your first offer, right?
One of the things she showed us is you don't have to just take it because that's the one role that's offered to you, right?
Yeah.
So you had that situation where that was the role you were offered. It fit you in terms of stereotype. It did not actually fit you in lived experiences. And at some point, just the idea of like, I don't have to do a role that doesn't fit right. And I do think her advice of like navigating it on your own and still exploring those roles in other ways, and the fact that we do have new media to do that with in terms of social media, etc., allows us to then go on and try those things out. We don't have to wait for someone else to approve our ability or our space to do it.
She was honestly just like so inspiring. Like I'm literally sitting here like, you guys, let's go.
Right?
Let's go.
No,
we can do this.
She really is the all right, fine, I'll do it myself. Like that TikTok sound. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No.
Okay, there's a TikTok. God, I'm crazy. But there's a TikTok sound. It's like this deep voice, and he's like, fine, I'll do it myself. And like, I feel like that's what Claire gave me. She was like, oh, fine, I'll do it myself.
I didn't expect such a dramatic reading of it again, but with slower speeches. I do love that she joked about the 17th table reads, just because she jokes there's too many. But what that shows me is she cares how the story lands.
Yeah.
Yes.
She cares about its impact on people. She cares about the ideas it carries them forward with. She cares about educational things to move them, to have a place to move ideas forward with. So I really am excited at some point. We'll have to get into those questions and see what we think. We might do an episode. We might do it on Patreon. Let us know in the comments what you want us to do.
Next week, we're super excited. And we don't normally give our secrets away, but next week, we're actually going to follow up this interview with an interview with the two lead actors of Empire Waste. So we are super, super excited. And we hope that you guys have enjoyed this. And we hope that you guys will go see the movie when it comes out. And
We're fat.
We're fab.
we're friends. And we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.